Hey, what's up, guys? Benji here again. Now, I'm assuming that you have just finished the video that kind of explains what gross profit is and what that how that works and why it's important, how that pertains to pricing and all that good stuff. So, mo- what was on that last video is kind of up here because I want to leave it here because keep in mind, net profit. Um, is kind of what we're dealing with down in this area. And so I just want to be able to see this because I think it'll make more sense. So as we get into um, you know, recap on gross profit. Gross profit is what we have, we sell a job for 25 grand. I got materials, I got my labor up here. I'm in it for 12.5. I got 12.5 left for gross profit, right? So that's where I'm sitting at 50%. Now, that sounds wonderful. And if you were working out of your basement and with shovels and you and your son that you paid in cash or something weird, some little helper that didn't need much, didn't show up as an employee or anything, then yeah, that would be fabulous. But for the most part, most of us aren't like that. We mostly have employees, we have equipment, we have trucks, we have all that kind of good stuff. So we need to take that in consideration. So this is the kind of the baseline that we're sitting at, right? Again, this is this gross profit of 50%. This is that kind of how it breaks down. Now, see if that breaks down for you guys the same way when you look at your numbers. Just pick any project that you've done. Doesn't have to be a certain one. You can just pick one and say, hey, how much did I spend on materials on that job? Because I know the majority of us out there don't. I won't say the majority of us, majority of you, because I do job costs. We do job costing every single week on all of our projects, so it's an ongoing thing. But most people don't. So most people don't know where these numbers would finish. But let's just pick one, and maybe to really give it a go, pick three. Pick a job that maybe didn't go so well. Pick a typical job, and then maybe lastly pick a job that you think, boy, we really did well on this one. I sold it right, went in fast, everything went great. Let's take a look at those, and that'll give us kind of an average and see, like, boy, are my materials 50%? Man, labor is really high. Now, if you guys are small enough to where you're still out working on the job, that's where you're going to have to decide where you consider this labor going in at. I mean, there's a number that whatever you're making, um, I'd rather not see that actually. I'd rather see you making a salary and that labor almost being, it's an accounting issue more than anything, but it makes more sense to say, hey, I'm the owner of the business. I'm going to make $10,000 a month or $120,000 as a salary. And anything that I do extra is bonus, right? But that doesn't count against my labor. Now, works a whole lot better once some of these numbers make a little bit more sense once you go to saying, hey, I'm not going to be their laborer any longer. I've got two or three guys and they do 95% of the installs now. I'm selling and I'm doing maintenance and I'm getting materials and I'm kind of PMing more than I am the labor, right? So I think that should be a goal for everybody, unless you just really love installing, and to each their own. But I know that eventually, as we get older, it starts to hurt the body, so it gets a little tougher. Anyway, we're at this 50% number, right? That we've made of gross profit here. Now we still have to take out other things that are not direct costs, right? So all these the expenses that are in here that take gross profit minus these expenses and get us to net profit, those are the items that are more indirect costs, right? So it's more your overhead, sales commission if you have a salesman, that you're paying for that, and we're going to get into that later why that is a um, an easy first step for growth for anybody is to get a salesperson. Take that off your plate, pay them commission, and but I'll dive into that further in a different video. But and then lastly, you've got office staff, and whether that is whether you're a company similar to mine, where you've got project managers, you've got office manager, we've got a permits and materials person, we've got a social media manager, that does all the marketing and videos, and then we've got the owners. So there are a couple of us that we have salaries that have to get eaten little by little in each project. So that's where those numbers come from. Now, you can have, I mean, some guys throw all the salaries for the office staff up in overhead, and their overhead is 30 or 35%. So you can kind of code this however you want, trying to break it down more so it just makes more sense instead of just having one big thing that's like overhead, of 40%. And that's just what it is. That covers everything. Well, let's break it down a little bit more, because how I would consider overhead, and I'll kind of go into this. I've got my P&L pulled up over here. Is it's everything from, like I list here, shop space, right? Do you have a shop? Um, Unless you paid cash for that thing, you're gonna pay for that, or you've got the mortgage on the land, or you just rent a spot, right? A commercial space, or you own it, whatever that is, wherever you do work, or you store trucks, or you do anything that's not like just your house. Well, you have to pay that every month. And then there's utilities on that spot. There's trucks, trailers, equipment, insurance, marketing, gas, uniforms. You see it, but there's also, so look over here. That there's advertising, there's bank charges, bank fees, um, software fees, design fees. There is, you would have, a lot of you, yeah, like I said, equipment in there. You're gonna have gasoline, right? You're gonna have insurance. We're at the point where our employees have benefits, so they have health insurance, life insurance, dental insurance, and so we pay 50% of those fees. So we have those as overhead. We've got meals that we do and parties that we throw for the employees. Those are in there. Office products, right? Everything down to pens and pencils and pads of paper. Um, that all goes in there. Promotional items, whether we buy gifts for, a client, that project went really well, they were easy to work with. We know that they're a, call it whatever you want, Ohio State football fan, and so we get them something Ohio State that we think would be neat to put on an outdoor patio, some little thing. So promotional items like that. Repair and maintenance, right? Big expense. So repair and maintenance, yeah, almost at 2%, right? 2% of the business just goes to keeping, we've got 7 trailers and 8 pieces of equipment, and you name it, those things all, trucks galore. Those things all need maintenance. They need oil changes, they need new tires, they need all that kind of stuff. So all those things go into it. Taxes and licenses, telephones, tools, of course, travel, uniforms, utilities, it kind of endless. So that's what goes into this overhead number for me, right? Is all those things that it takes to run a business, that they don't have a direct cost on this. I mean, you could, if you really wanted to get militant about it, you could say, hey, how much gas did I use? Right? I mean, you could say, hey, I didn't use the equipment for any hour. You can get as crazy as you want, but you don't have to. You can just throw it in overhead because it's a whole lot easier and makes more sense. Second line down here is sales commissions, right? That's a different person that sells it. It's not, when we first started, that was me. I was out selling it and sold every single one. So we didn't have sales commissions. Now we do, though. If we had, now that we have 3 or 4 salespeople, it takes paying them, and so that's a big chunk. And then we have our office staff, right? Like we said, so all these percentages matter. So this totals up. Let's just total it really fast. Right, we've got 40%. So if you're over here and you're saying, hey, I might not be at 50 because it's not that big a deal. I'm fine making $10,000 on that project, but my percentages here are outrageous. And keep in mind, it doesn't matter your size of your business. It actually does, because these numbers here tend to get a little bit better, especially overhead and office staff, because people can kind of take on more. When you're littler, one office person really makes it tough on percentage wise, right? Because you have to eat so much of their salary. So let's say you're a business. So we do 5 million, right? And so our office staff is, we'll call it $1 million. It looks like almost probably 800, 900,000. Yeah, 900,000 for everybody to employ everyone in the office and all the management and owners and all that kind of stuff. Now, you might say, well, I'm going to do 1 million. Mine's not going to be that much. Like, man, at 1 million, you only have 180,000 to spend. So let's say you pay yourself 100,000 and you have a lady answering the phones and one other person, you're probably going to be right there. Right. So these things don't go away. The only thing that's nice is that as you get bigger, that overhead number can go down. That top overhead number of 15% for me, this thing used to be 24, 26% when we were littler, because you still have to have all this stuff, right? You still have to have a space that you store all the equipment and you do everything. Um, we were doing 1.5 million and I was spending $30,000 on marketing. Well, we do 5 million and I spend 40,000 on marketing. So our marketing expense goes down, right? I mean, yeah, we're under 1% of our total revenue that we spend on marketing. So it those things actually get better the bigger you get. So just keep in mind, you have to find out these numbers. And if you need help with that, there's Google for days, YouTube for days on YouTube University, but also, give me a shout out if you're having trouble figuring out, hey, where does this expense go? I'll help out. I love this stuff. I love diving into the numbers and everything, if you can't tell. But if you're at 40%, as your overhead number after you pay for everything, and you're a guy that makes 45, maybe 44, 43%, well, now your net profit is now the difference between these two numbers. So let's say it's 3 to 5%. I've got over here as a goal or as the key, which is, if you're under 5%, why even doing this? You're doing, let's say you're doing $1 million and you're making 4%. You're like, man, you just made, $40,000. Um, it doesn't seem like it's worth the work. You're like, well, but I make 100 grand on top of that. You're like, man, if you're good at this and you can run a business doing $1 million, you can go work for a lot of companies. And if you're in Kansas City, give me a shout. Make $100 work for somebody else, and you don't have to mess around with any of this stuff. Right now, you just go put in projects, run a crew or two, and yeah, you make over $100,000 doing that, working for a bigger company that can afford that overhead of a really good project manager. So I wouldn't mess with it. Now, if you're doing, 2 million and you're making another 100, okay, now it starts to get better. Of course, everything gets better the higher you go here, right? To a point, but for the most part, when you're really small, it's tough because every single expense hurts so much. It just makes it harder. Now, some of the expenses you are saving on, because if you're out there installing, you might not have labor at 15%, right? You might have two guys that you pay, $20 an hour, and they're making $800 a week, 1,600 bucks, and the three of you can put in a $25,000 project. Well, now you're at 16. Let's say this is 1,600, because you're not putting any of that. Well, you're at 54%. Now, this might be higher than 40%. So, right, I mean, it's this back and forth play of what this is, and I don't want to get this to get too confusing, but the main thing is that this number up here, this gross profit number, whether you're at 45, 50, or 55, these are kind of things that you can control, because a lot of this is based on pricing, right? If you're pricing this $25,000 job at 27.5 instead of 25, well, now you're making 15,000. You're at almost 55% when we round, and we still have overhead of 40%, which, man, that seems really high. It's awful, but now you're making 15% on that job. Now you're a best in class type of company, right? So I think the first goal has got to be for any company has got to be net profit goal of 8%. I mean, it's the baseline. That's not like, man, if I get to 8%, I'm killing it. No, that's just good. It's not incredible, right? Simple math. If you can get to a business that's doing, we'll call it 3 million, you know, at 10%, this is for easy math, right? We can be making real money here. You can be making $300,000, right? On $3 million if you make 10%. Now, change this number, because you've increased your prices, you're really charging high end, but you're putting in high end installs. I mean, it jumps fast, right? It's 150,000 extra in your pocket, and you haven't added anything more, right? These don't change. That's the nice part about pricing is pricing goes to the bottom line, right? When you charge 25,000 for something, and you make 50%, you've got 40% overhead, you make 10% net profit. Fabulous. Now, if you can somehow train your sales reps or yourself to sell better, right? To make sure people understand the value that you're installing, that look at how I install it, look at all my reviews, look at everything that's wonderful about me. Get them to trust you and say, yeah, I believe that this guy's going to put this in and it's not going to get all fucked up, right? It's going to be perfect. I'm not going to have to call anybody else back out and redo this and spend another five, 10, $15,000. Then they'll pay the 27.5. Now you're at 55. Now you're at this 15% because this is the real goal, right? Now there are guys out there that are doing, I've heard, 20%. Now that's got to be a really little guy that's got one crew. He does the selling, he does invoicing, he does accounting, he does the marketing, he installs, and he's charging a really good rate. And is that the best way to run a business? It might be, right? It might be the easiest to say, yeah, I do $1 million. I've got labor of, you know, 6%. My materials are at 30. I'm making 60, 4% gross. I've got tiny overhead of 30 and I'm making 25, 30%. Yeah, that might be the best way to do it. But that guy's also working his tail off doing everything under the sun. So it's just a trade off. But the main point is if you can take care of the gross profit and get that in line where you want to be, 50% is a great spot to be, right? Because most people are going to be around this 35 to 40% number. And so that leaves you with 10 to 15%. That's the whole goal, right? 12% on an annual basis is phenomenal, right? Let's change these numbers and make them a little smaller. So you're doing 1.5 million. Um, Now we can do. I don't have to redo that. At 1.5 million, at 10%, you're doing 150,000 profit over whatever you're taking as a salary. Great living, everything's good. Now at 12%, then you got another 180. Now some of this you have to keep in the business, right? We can't just drain this down every year, so you're not going to take all of that. Depends on the size of your company, how much you want to leave in there, right? But we can dive into that as far as when we get into some of the cash flows of how to run a business. But if it was me, I would keep 100,000 of that. So you're taking 80. So maybe you're making 100. You're throwing 80 in your pocket at the end of the year as a bonus, and you're like, man, I'm walking away with 180 every year, and I got a 1.5 million dollar business, and it's run solidly. We're pricing correctly. That's what you should be doing. Don't apologize for making $180,000 in a business. It's not that big of a deal, right? It should be, and for most people with larger businesses at all, that is what they're doing, right? That's what that's bare minimum what the owner of the company should be making. So Don't apologize. Instead, take your 12% that you're making up here and let's get to 15%, right? Let's make more. Then let's take it to the next level. Let's make it a $3 million business doing 15%. That'd be even better because at 3 million, these start getting more in line, right? If you can get overhead down to here, sales doesn't really change. Your office staff, an office staff that runs a $3 million company can still run a $5 million company for the most part. You were probably just heavy on staff at 3 million because at 3 million you have to start hiring people. Somebody has to answer the phone. Somebody has to do all sorts of things, right? This maybe comes down to 16. Right now you're at 37% and you're just running at 50% gross profit. Well, now you're making 13%, right? 13% on 3 million, right? You're making, yeah, yeah, it's a big number, right? That surprised me even. But that's what it takes, right? As opposed to there's so many guys out there that aren't concerned with gross profit and they're out here doing 3 million, but they're going, oh man, I don't, maybe I need to raise my prices. I don't know if I can. But at the end of the day, I made, okay, not times four, 0.4. Yeah, let's try this again. No, right? On 3 million, they're doing 4% net profit and they have 120,000 and 100 of it they need to keep in the business to pay down debts and improve the shop and do all sorts of stuff. And they're putting 20 grand in their pocket. They in essence have a nice job where they're making $100,000 salary and they made a $20,000 bonus in a year. They're making 120, and there's a whole lot easier ways. I'm telling you, you can go work for a bigger company that's doing $5 to $15 million in your town, assuming you live in a halfway decent size metro area, and go work for one of those guys and make 90 to $140,000 all day long. So um, that's the choice. So if I'm this guy, I would quit. I'd stop. I would go, man. I'm going to raise my prices, and if I can't sell at those prices, then so be it. And I'm going to stop. I'm going to close the business down, and I'm going to go work for somebody else. But what should happen is you raise your prices, you make sure that you can get to this 50%. You get to a decent size where you're running at 38% of all these expenses, these indirect costs that get you to your GP number, to your net profit number, not your gross profit. And then all of a sudden you're making 12% on 3 million and you have 360 grand and you're taking $250,000 bonus at the end of the year on top of your 100,000. Or once you get to that point, we're probably going to bump up your salary to 180 and then you're going to take, $120,000 bonus at the end of the year. And your wife loves you because you get to go on freaking incredible vacations and the kids are going to great schools and going on vacations with them and Disney World, and your employees love you because you give them, you don't give them $300 Christmas bonuses anymore. You give them $2,600 Christmas bonuses. And every once in a while, when you know somebody's struggling with their personal life and something's happened to them, you give them cash on the side to say, hey, man, I know you're going through something. Let me help you out with a little bit of extra money to help you get you through it. And that guy stays forever with you because he loves you. But it allows you to do all those things. So this isn't just a number crunching. This part sucks. I hate it. This is the business, right? The business has to get to these numbers. It has to get to 50% because we know that we have expenses over here and we know that we want to make 10 to 15% at the end of the year. That's the goal, right? If you get out there and you've made 7.2 or you made 9.1, you can't look at that and go, "Oh, I suck. This is horrible." No, you still have a great life, right? If we run this number at 8%, and it's still $240,000 profit that thing's doing after paying everybody. You can still take $100,000 bonus on top of your $120,000 salary, and you're making a great living. But you have to do this. If you're flying by the seat of your pants and you're going, oh my gosh, I don't know how guys are charging $40 a square foot for pavers or $50 a square foot for natural stone or whatever it is in your city, and you're like, oh, how do those guys do that? That doesn't seem fair. No, that guy's not being a jerk, and he's not taking advantage of his customers. He's actually just taking care of himself, his employees, his business, right? Because he's got a bunch of cash in the bank. So when inflation starts going high, right? Interest rates go up, and nobody's refining or nobody's pulling out money to do a home improvement like a big patio or a pool. When those things aren't happening as often and it gets a little tight and the little guys start struggling and going out of business, he's still able to live, keep his freaking business afloat, get through those hard times and come out even better on the other end, right? Because all those little guys that didn't do this and didn't have enough money in the bank and struggled to get through the tough times, well, when they closed down, they all had one or two guys that were incredible workers. You know what they're going to do? They're going to call you up and say, hey, I see that you're still in business. My company went under. I was the lead foreman on this crew. I'd love to come work for you. I'm used to making, you know, $31 an hour. Can you afford me? And you say, yes. When can you start? Because you always are looking for incredible guys to come work for you, even if they're on the higher end of the pay scale, right? Which for you might be $30 an hour, for some might be 45 an hour. Just it could be 24, whatever that is. But when you get good guys come to you, when you have enough cash flow and your business is healthy, you can bring on smart, talented, really good people. Makes less work for you, right? Because you don't have to manage them, train them, teach them, hey, here's how you build a step, here's how you build a column, here's how the wall meets into a column. You don't have to do that. They go, yeah, I know, I've been doing this for 11 years. I got it. I got the installs. Just give me the information I need and get out of my way. Perfect. That's what I'm looking for, right? That's what I want our foreman to be at my company. So I know it's a lot of information. I've tried to keep it on just this one page to keep it a little simple. Sometimes that's hard to do, right? I mean, it just is. But when it comes down to it, you want to be one of these three numbers, right? You'd rather not be this guy because this gets really, really tight. You want to be this guy, but the goal is to get to here, maybe a touch higher. I think that could be tough, but this is a really good goal because if you're doing 54%, 56% gross profit, somewhere in there, and your overheads here, you're making really good money and you don't really have to worry about a whole lot as far as the business. So now you can start tweaking little, small little things that make your business better and make you stand out instead of how do I afford things and how can I go sell something to get another deposit to make sure that that can get in the bank fast enough so I can cover payroll next week. That's what we don't want, right? So long video about net profit and how gross profit affects that and how those two work together to make the business. But keep in mind, this is the business. The business is this one sheet here is you have to make it to where your budgeted materials and your budgeted labor come out to 50% or better. If you do that and you aren't just crazy on these expenses over here, you're going to be fine. If you don't, if you start getting into under 45, under 40, God forbid, 35% gross profit, you're going to have to be really, really efficient, really, really lean. And it just makes it really, really hard. So let's learn from that. Best in class companies don't do that, right? Best in class companies are running at 14, 15, 17, 18% profit. And they have healthy margins, they have healthy bank accounts, and they're hiring guys. Sometimes they probably take your guys because they can pay more than you can pay because you're trying to be the low cost guy and do what's right by your neighbor and your neighbor's friend that wants one and the neighbor's friend's friend that wants one. And next thing you know, you're giving good deals to everybody, but you don't have any money in the bank. Let's not be that. Let's be better. But if you have any questions or comments, always reach out. But we'll see you on the next video. Thanks, guys.